Look at that. I was doing all that talking. Thank you so much, Tian lady. Let me start over because we've been at it for like a minute or so. Let me start over. So, welcome to this week's Paint With Me Live. My name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a professional graphic designer and illustrator. And Sundays is the day that I work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So if you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Tian lady, for letting me know. Because I was running from another part of my house to my desk. So I forgot to hit the unmute button on the mic. So I really appreciate you for being there. But I'm so glad you're jumping right into it. So before we get into today's live stream, if you would like to see more of these live creation videos, or if you just like to help me out and push this video to more people, please be sure to hit the like button. That helps me out so much, and it helps boost this video. And also, if you have not yet subscribed, I do have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, and I would love to have you on board. So yeah, I'm coming off the heels of my birthday. I turned 40 Tuesday on the 21st, so I'm really excited about that. I had a great I had a real good time. But before we get into that, let me tell you what we're working on today. So today we're going to be working on the Five of Pentacles for the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now this is a new card. This is the last of the fives for this deck. And Wednesday during our Bring Your Own Project Live, we actually did some thumbnailing to sort of flesh out the ideas. So to break this card down, this card is about financial loss. So it's illustrated. If we were to analyze what we're looking at in the card, which is pretty much how you read tarot, you're interpreting the images, the numbers, and then all of the implied symbolism as you answer a question for yourself or for someone else. So in the Five of Pentacles, this card is illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith, and we see two people outside in the cold. So they're outside, they're sort of in rags, they're hurt, they look like they're in a bad situation, right? But behind them, or to the side of them, we see a cathedral window. We see these yellow pentacles, and it implies that there is warmth behind this glass, right? There's warmth on the other side of these the stained glass windows. And so the idea is that these people are out in the cold and they're sort of struggling. They don't have the proper gear, the proper clothes, or any of that. They're having financial struggles, but that warmth is just on the other side of this wall, but the door is not available to them. So they could keep going and find the door, or they can walk right past. So this implies that Pentacles dealing with the material realm, so your finances, just objects, materialism, all of those things. Also relationships, physical relationships, sexual relationships, all of those kinds of things. So these people are clearly struggling in the realm of the material. And so it implies that fives generally deal with conflict. So that this implies that there's a conflict with the material realm. We like to think that it's about money. So it is a card that deals with financial struggle and loss, as well as just material loss. Again, physical relationship types of loss and conflict. So that is the meaning behind this card. Now, for the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, anytime I go into interpreting or sort of figuring out how to represent each card in a new illustration, I like to kind of think about what this would look like today, right? Or what this would look like in the future, because I am leaning a little bit into speculative art and Afrofuturism and science fiction and all of those things. And so I tend to associate either a word or a phrase to go with each card. Just a feeling. Now this specific card was one that I was stuck on early on, just in the development process. Typically I'll develop the cards in fours, and as a part of that I will go through like all the keywords, all of the sort of words and phrases and scenarios and all that. But this one was one that I was kind of stuck on up until recently. And so I asked myself, what does it feel like to have financial struggles, right? What does that feel like to sort of not really know what where the next, whatever is coming from, whether that's your next meal or your next sort of bill, how any of that is going to be paid. And so the idea in my mind the idea that I came up with is drowning. Sometimes it feels like you're drowning and you sort of cannot reach safety, even though it may be a few feet away, right? So as this original card implies, warmth is just a few feet away. They just have to access the door. And in the view that we see, we don't see the door. So drowning is where we're going with this. I thought it was a great idea. So Wednesday we came and we did some thumbnailing. Now anytime I thumbnail, I am not looking to be perfect, right? We're not looking to make completely fleshed out sketches or any of that. I just kind of want to get down the ideas so that I can build upon it and find or correct references and all of that as I move forward. So there were a few that I kind of liked, right? And I made notes to myself Wednesday during this stream. We were only here for about 30 minutes or so. This represents about 30 minutes of work on this particular idea. And I've narrowed it down to illustrating a person who is sort of sinking, right? And above them, the pentacles will be represented by floats, or we might even have pentacle shaped floats, but they'll be circular objects, and that is going to be our pentacle. So I've actually put together a reference I'll show you here in a bit. So I did a 3D model in Clip Studio Paint, and I was able to use some of the lighting and change the color of the lighting and pose my character. Now I'm using another picture to represent the background, so there is somebody else in this picture. We just gonna pretend that he's not there. Right? But the idea is that I wanted our character to feel as though that she was falling into this depth, and above her, imagine there are going to be some circular shapes, again representing those pentacles in this particular illustration. So that's where we are with the Five of Pentacles. I'm really excited to get started. Now you guys are going to witness a little bit of the ugly phase of creating. Usually I have the sketch already completed, so you don't see that. Right? But we're gonna work it out together, and we're gonna work with like the general lag that I tend to get with streaming and drawing, but we're gonna do what we can do, right? So I hope you guys are having a great week, or had a great week so far. I have my file set up. I have all of my guidelines to let me know exactly where my border is going to be, where the bleed line is, and all of that. And I'll run through some of the references. So down in my reference panel, these are some of the references that I pulled that I felt were somewhat relevant in some way, whether it was the shape of the water, whether it was the color of the water, whether it was the way that the light came through, whether it was just for me to see what water looks like, right? Whether it was the flow of the clothes, such as this one, which I'll probably draw pretty heavily on once we get to adding details to our main character. So yeah, here's where we are. I pulled that image that I just showed you guys with our 3D model into a JPEG, and so that I can access it and access her pose while I'm sort of drawing. Again, this may not look pretty. Right? And that's perfectly okay. We're all right with it not looking pretty. That is very much a part of the process. And so as we are creating work, you want to sort of enjoy the process. To me, art is much more about the process than it is the final product. We let our viewers enjoy and interpret the final product, but as artists, there is so much that comes from creating, right? There are so many mistakes and hills that we climb just to get to that final product, and this is one of them. Right, so let's get on into it. So I'm just going to follow the general shape of our character. Again, this probably won't be super perfect, and we may or may not be here for a very long time, depending on how much I'm struggling with it. Right, and how much sweat I want to share with you guys. But otherwise, we're going to be here just for a little while. We're going to get to shape, and then we'll see where we go from there. So again, I hope y'all are doing all right. Hope that y'all had a great week. So back to my birthday. So TN lady asked me how did my birthday go. It went fantastic. It went really, really well. This was, so I tend not to sort of get overly excited. I don't know, I'm finding that a lot of cancers are like that. We don't get overly excited about our birthdays. So when my son was a lot younger, I would just kind of like whatever he wants to do, you know, because he was a kid. So it's like, oh, don't make no big deal, whatever he wants to do just so he can enjoy it. But since I'm older now, I'm like, okay, he's older, I'm older, I can kind of, it's okay for me to like want for myself. So I had a blast. I had a really, really great time. I celebrated over the course of 2 days. So one of the gifts that I was gifted, I was not able to fulfill that day because of the weather and things like that. So I was able to do it the next day, and so that was a whole lot of fun. But I felt so much love and so much sort of I don't know how to, I felt special. I felt real spoiled too. I was like, come on, spoil. Felt real good. It was nice. It was nice. So one of the things that I did, which was the thing that I did on the second day, was I actually took a flight lesson, like a discovery flight. And that was so much fun. So I have been flying in somebody's airplane, I know, since I've been like 5 years old, right? Used to go cross country to see my dad for a very long time, and then it got to a point where he would just drive and come to pick us up and drive back. But I've been on planes for a good chunk of my life, and I also worked around airplanes for a little piece of life, right? And so I had a supervisor who was a pilot, and at that time, I think I was maybe 23, 24, and he was very encouraging in me learning how to do two things: play golf and learn to fly a plane. And so I just, lives and all of that. And so it was just always something that I had kind of held in the back of my head. I never really spoke it out loud. Up until years, I've been kind of sprinkling it in to my husband, like, that's gonna be, anytime I see like videos of like people flying and taking like solo trips and things like that where they're the pilot. I'm like, that's gonna be me one day. You know what I mean? Not paying too much attention, just talking, you know. And then my brother started to take flying lessons, and I got even more inspired. I was like, okay, cool, he doing it, you know, he doing it real well too. So it was just something in the back of my mind. So my husband surprised me with a discovery flight. And I thought that I would be, I was nervous just a little bit, just I guess for the unknown. But once we got in the airplane, and it was one of them little bitty ones that looked like a little crop duster. It was a little bitty plane. It wasn't like high tech or anything. It was looked like it had seen some miles. It was just so much fun, right? So I think initially I definitely did a bunch of hollering in that pole man ear once he gave me the controls initially. But ultimately, I had a great time. So I would like to explore that. We'll see how that goes, but maybe do another one and see how I feel doing that. Just as like a super side quest mission, right? So it was great. I did that. I had my only request for my birthday is I wanted like a cartoon cake, and I know that sounds silly and crazy and all, but that's what I wanted. I was like, look, I'm toward of turning 40. I know sometimes when we get to be of a certain age, we start to take life a little more seriously. So to me, that was my idea of like staying very jovial, staying very lighthearted, you know, continuing to be very lighthearted, and just enjoying it. So it was really nice. So it was really nice. So if you guys wish me a happy birthday, if you sent me a message, if I heard from you, you know, later on or privately, I really appreciate. I really appreciate it. So I really do. All right. So here we go. Now back to this ugly part of this drawing. All right. So all I'm going to be doing is putting down shapes to start. I'm going to be making sure that I match the angle as close as I can without doing too much. Not necessarily worrying about proportions right now. We're going to get some roundabout proportions, but I am very much concerned about shapes, right? So I'm looking at the angle of her shoulders. I'm looking at the arch of her back, right, compared to the way that her waist and hips are kind of falling. So she has a bit of a little bit of an exaggerated S curve, if you will. So her body does something like this. Let me see if it shows up. It does something like this, right? Right. So we're sort of following that as we move forward, and we'll move and change things around. And I like doing this. Sometimes what I will do is just to kind of give myself a shortcut. Sometimes I'll actually just kind of use the references one-to-one, but I find that when I draw looser, or when I draw sort of from my own hand, and I don't know if that's the proper way to say it, but sometimes when I'm like freestyling the drawing, right, I tend to like the way that it looks better. So again, we're just going to be adding in these shapes, not necessarily reaching for perfection just yet, right? Just kind of taking into account what these shapes look like, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, so 40 wasn't too bad so far. 40 wasn't too bad. I hadn't had any like phantom pains and nothing like that. I surely do remember when I had my trainer, and I think I was with him. I think I was training maybe like a day or so after he had turned 40, and he was all talking about he starting to hurt out of nowhere, and I'm like, man, don't say that. He ain't got much longer. Hey, Black said too. Don't say that, man. I ain't got much longer now. You ain't making me feel better about this. But yeah, it was great. I really had a good time. All right, so I'm gonna put in some sockets here. Again, this is not gonna look, and I feel like I'm apologizing for it, but this is just part of the process. This is what we're gonna look like, and we will, so that her butt is way below her shoulder. So she definitely is doing something like this, right? And then her torso is doing this, right? And then she has a hip. And then it kind of comes up, something like this. Now this is going to look bigger than it'll be. I want her to be relatively small in comparison to the card itself, because I want it to feel as though she's drowning, right? I want us to feel the weight of the water. and I am checking my proportions. So what I'm doing, and you guys can't see it, so I am drawing directly on the screen, right? So next to the in the reference panel is pretty close to where I'm drawing. So I'm taking my pen and I am measuring the angles, right? So if her leg is angled this way, I am also angling that, or trying to anyway, angling that on her body, just so we can kind of get it worked out. And this is again going to take several versions. And then when I get to feeling too shame, then we'll call it, and we'll move on and come back on Wednesday. So for instance, that leg is super short, looks weird. So we're going to elongate that, and we may make her bigger, or not bigger, but smaller. Here we go. So, how have you guys been? How's your summer been? I know we're getting ready to start school for the kiddos that are in school, or for the parents that have kids in school. School is getting ready to start here very soon. So, I'm really looking forward to that. This year, my son is in high school. So, that means that time is really going to be flying by. And as a parent, I'm a little nervous. I can't lie to you. Just as he's getting older. I remember my mother-in-law telling me that we worry about them, or you think you worried about them when they're babies, but you really start to worry once they become like young adults and things like that. And I'm starting to feel it, like as a mom, but I know that, as parents, our job is always to guide our kids and to sort of do the best we can, but also recognize that they're going to live their own lives, and they're going to have their own interests and their own, just journeys and experiences and things like that. So it's okay. All right, we all gonna be all right. So if you have some babies that are going to the next grade or starting school, I know I'm in the age range now where some people have grandkids and some people have toddlers. That is where we are in our 40s. That's just kind of how it is. But whatever stage your child is in, we're gonna be all right. Right, we're gonna be all right. All right, so again, this is not looking great. We're just putting down lines. We'll kind of work it out and work our shapes and things out and polish everything once we're happy with the way that it looks. Now this foot is going to be smaller because it's off in the distance, but I like that her toes are pointed up. Now, I feel as though we could probably exaggerate the angle of her torso a bit. And we'll see what that does, and pull it down, and also make it bigger so that it's proportional with the rest of her body, so she don't look too weird. Come on, there we go. Yeah, so we're rocking and rolling on these cards. I'm really happy for the progress. I hoped to be further along, but we have had a lot of good things happen. So currently I have art that is featured at the summer art show at the Germantown Community Theater. So there, if you are in the Memphis area, if you like to just kind of check that out, they're actually running a summer sort of youth play, but the art is open to there was no age cap or anything like that. But I think the theme dealt with fantasy, what was the other thing, whimsical art. So in it, I submitted the Hermit from this collection, I submitted the Lovers from this collection, as well as Strength, because I had all of those just in my space as a canvas print. So if you're in the area, if you like those kinds of paintings, they're for sale on my website, but also that you can see them in person at the Germantown Community Theater. So I'm super happy with that. I am also always still looking for other opportunities and things to sort of showcase my art. It's been really nice this year, I will say. Now there is one art show that I wanted to be able to do, but I'm not really sure if I'm going to have the opportunity or the time to make something for it. But I'm still looking for things, right? Still looking for things. I think having done that one art show in April really sort of opened up the doors for me. And so I'm finding also that in these smaller shows, the splits are a lot more fair and favorable as opposed to doing an exhibition through a gallery. So that's also really been nice. All right, so we're drawing in just sort of the implication of this arm, and we'll kind of put this in as best and as proportional, hopefully, as we can, and we'll make it through. Now again, I'm doing this live. If I were doing this in person, this would probably be a much slower process as I figure out proportions, right? Proportions are super important to making sure that everything looks human, right? Everything looks sort of the way that you want it to look. And then you kind of go from there. But I feel as though her back is a little bit wider than I have it here. And then her arm kind of does one of these things, and we have some foreshortening. So in foreshortening, the closer a thing is to the camera, the larger it is, but it's not necessarily going to be one-to-one proportions to her other limbs. So we'll move that. Now, this is also one of the reasons why I like to do traditional art. I like to start it on in Clip Studio. Why? Because it is so much easier for me to erase and move things around as opposed to doing that on canvas, right? Sometimes with canvases, the more you erase, the more like issues you have with like the quality of the canvas overall. So anytime I can do all of my figuring on the computer, it usually works out for the best for me. Now, something about this I ain't liking, so let's see what it is. Let's check our proportions and our angles. So that's pretty much right. This one's needs some adjusting. And this might need to go down longer. So for you guys who are watching, do you guys enjoy watching these Paint With Me Live series? Is there anything that you would like for me to show or showcase on this channel? If there is, whether you're watching this live or the replay, please let me know. I'm always open to suggestion in terms of what I can create that you guys may be interested in. Let me see. This angle does something like this. This goes out. Yeah, I would love to know what it is that you would like for me to do on this channel. Now, there are some things that I will be doing regardless, like the self-portrait that I'll be working on here pretty soon in the coming months. So that might take me a little while to do, and I'll show and showcase how I develop those from start to finish. Is pretty much the same process, except that the whatever I do digitally, the intention will be to print it out and then to create a grid for it so that I can draw it physically, right, on a canvas, even though I'm technically drawing physically now. So I'll print it out, do my grids and all of that on canvas, and then what I will do is come back and tighten everything up and get ready to paint. I like the last painting that I did. I actually did a light study, which helped me out a whole lot because it had a very dynamic lighting to it, where the central figure was was actually the light source, and he illuminated all of the figures around him. So I did that in Clip Studio as well, which helped out a whole bunch. And so I'll just show you that process and show you what it is that I do to sort of prepare for paintings and getting them ready for a canvas. I'll also show you how I stretch canvas. Now, for me, stretching canvas is something that I do just because I have the tools to do it. I have lots and lots of just spare canvas laying around, and I also have a lot of stretcher strips that I purchased over the years that I need to use up. But typically you don't need to know how to stretch canvas in order to like paint. You'll always find good deals and things like that at places like Michael's or Jerry's Autorama or whatever your local art store is. Here it's Art Center. Art Center is just a really long way away from where I stay, so anytime I'm going or need something extremely quick, I usually just kind of hop over to Michael's. But wherever you are shopping, or whatever company you like, there's usually some pretty good deals on canvas. I had gotten into stretching canvas, I want to say about 2013 or so. And I got kind of lucky because I actually had purchased a big old like blanket of canvas to use from eBay, and the seller sent it to me, and unfortunately the bottom like inch had mold on it. So I emailed him back and was like, hey, I purchased this lot of canvas and it had mold in it. Would you like for me to send it back? But I just kind of, we need to rectify it. And they ended up sending me a whole big old another blanket of canvas, and the moldy part of the initial part that they sent, I was able to kind of clean up and get rid of the mold, so they worked out. But I just have it sitting around, right? So anytime I can use it either for commissions or for like my own personal projects, to me, that is the way to go. So that is saves me a lot of money, and because it's already paid for and I already got it, right? And it make sure that I'm actually infusing a lot of myself into the art that I create. So I really enjoy stretching canvas. It's just like the process, right? So that is one of the arguments that we like to sort of lean into. One of the things that I like to emphasize when we're comparing like human made art, even when it's digital, right? Even when it's something like this, to your generative AI. So I think a large argument for people who may not have ever worked in the arts that use AI is that, well, it's quick and easy. It doesn't require you gatekeeping and all of these things. I just put in my idea and the thing gets spit out. But to me, a large part of being an artist is the process. That starts with a thought, right? Which we have in common with people who do generative AI. We both have thoughts of things that we want to create, right? Or we want to have created. From there, figuring out how to make that a reality, to me, separates that generative sort of AI prompting from being able to actually execute a thing that came from the ethers, right? So it came from the heavens, came from your higher self, it came from the universe, or wherever you think your thought comes from the inspiration, from the world around you, from whatever, right? Figuring out a way to make that a reality, to me, is a large part of what makes an artist an artist. It's not so much the skill, it's not so much the ability to create, but it is very much figuring out how to make it real and tangible. That makes it a very special thing. And so anytime you are able to or interested in learning to draw, I highly encourage it myself. I don't really care how old you are. There are classes for seniors if you're a senior. There are classes for adults in their 40s and 50s. There are classes for young adults that you can take. There's always YouTube. There's always someone who is showing you how to do a thing for yourself so that you can create, and so that we can kind of promote more of the human sort of expression, right? As well, it's also important to note that generative AI does not exist without the human artist, right? It doesn't exist because those ideas come from somewhere, right? That sort of representation of whatever the prompt is created from gathering information from sources that already exist, from the thoughts of others. So that was actually something that I had, sort of something that I struggled with while I was doing a lot of fan art, right? So as an artist, I enjoy I just love the process of creating, right? Very much a process person, which is why I started making process videos in 2013. And so I had gotten to a point where I was working a lot, right? I was doing a lot of comic book conventions, and I was creating a lot of fan art, and I was also doing comic covers, which was a lot of fun. That was sort of my introduction into doing book covers and things like that. I was doing a lot of comic covers for independent publishers, which is who I work for now. Work for a lot of independent authors and independent publishers. But at that time, I was spending a significant amount of time recreating other people's ideas, right? And as someone who's been an artist my entire life and who really appreciates the arts and studies the arts from the history to the present and just sort of likes the process of creating, I had a internal conflict with myself of, okay, we're spending a lot of time developing something that already exists. Should we not spend time identifying who we are as artists and how we can reflect that in the art that I can create? So that is sort of what brought me around to the Cosmic Gateway Tarot. Now, this was a project that I had been wanting to do for a long time. And because I had spent so much time in that sort of fan art realm, right? Again, developing other people's ideas and also creating for that specific audience. Because when you're going to these conventions or you're setting up for these conventions, you can have original art, right? And depending on the style of that original art, it may do very well. But on the as a whole, people are sort of looking for their favorite characters. They're looking for the shows that they identify with or that they grew up with. And so my lane was creating sort of that nostalgia. So most of my art was based in things that I grew up with, whether it was Big Trouble in Little China or The Last Dragon when I did Show Enough, and characters that I really liked as I grew up. And I was also taking requests and things like that. But again, I'm developing my sort of vision of someone else's ideas. And so when you're in these spaces, people are expecting that, right? But those aren't the only spaces that you can sell your artwork. And so, but in my mind, in my limited thinking at that time, I was thinking, oh man, if I go into like the stuff that I really want to create and the things that I really want to see, like the mythological creatures and the, the tarot and all of these archetypes and gods and goddesses and all of these things, I'm going to lose the audience that I had built. Up to that point, anywhere I would go in the convention space, especially here locally, there were people who were looking for me, right? Which was always mind blowing. There were people who were looking to see what I had. And so I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna let those people down. But I think it came down to, is it worth letting those people down or letting myself down? So while I had the time, the energy, the resources, and the support system to do so, it made so much more sense for me to just be honest in the craft. And honest in what it is that I wanted to create. So that's where we are now, right? Now fast forward some years, it took me quite a bit of time to sort of get to the point where I was ready to kind of jump off on the cliff. I had been sort of playing around with different motifs. I think I had done like some sirens, I did some witches and things like that, just like small illustrations and things, just to kind of test the waters, I guess, and also just to get it out of my consciousness. Right? I just wanted to be able to get it all out of my mind so that I could create the thing that I want to see, test it out, see how it goes. And so once I kind of got past the sort of fear of doing that and being vulnerable in that space, creating and sharing something that I wasn't normally sharing, and got past it, everything was fine, right? I was doing good. I was like, we straight. And so I took the leap, started sharing the tarot deck, and we've been up since then. Now, since we've been doing this, there is still a need for balance, right? Because all of the art that I create isn't necessarily tarot related. A lot of it is related in the same themes of Afrofuturism and speculative art and science fiction and all of that, spiritual even in nature, right? But definitely wanted to be able to share other things. So that's where some of the other artworks and paintings will come into play. In the book cover that we just finished last week, and just in case you guys missed it, not last Wednesday, but last Sunday, I gave a glimpse of one of the book covers that I'm designing for my website. So if you would like to see what that looks like, I would highly encourage checking that out. But just showing some of those things, I think, is helping to balance it out for me. I'm also one of those types of creators that tend to have 1,001 ideas. If you can't tell yet, 1,001 ideas and 1,001 things that I would like to try and experience and create and sort of live through, and all of that all at one time, all the time. Right? And I'm super happy for that, happy for the ability to be able to always have ideas. Sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming just because I am one person, and so I'm not always don't always have the luxury of time to explore all of those things. But anytime that happens for me, if you're the type of person that gets 1,001 ideas as well, one of the things that I highly suggest doing, and one of the things that I do, is I will take these note cards. I'll show you. I'll take a note card. I usually keep a stack by my desk, right? I'll take these little blank index cards that you can get from Walmart or wherever, and I will typically jot down whatever the idea is and as much information about that idea as I can sort of think of at that time. Sometimes that involves a thumbnail or a sketch, and I do that visualizing exactly what it is that I want to create. So some of the cards that I've created for this deck have been cards that I thought about years ago, right? I had jotted these ideas down years ago, but maybe I was working on something else and just were not able to get to that, or maybe we weren't on the threes at the time before I got the three of whatever, right? And so that is how I navigate it. That way I'm always still sort of getting those ideas. I feel like anytime you have something, you don't do some act towards it, it goes to somebody else, and the next thing you know, you're online doom scrolling and somebody is doing the thing that you were thinking about doing. Now, even when that happens, that does not mean that you cannot also do it, right? What do I mean? If you go into the grocery store, go down the bread aisle, there are going to be about 1,000 different kinds of bread that you can get, right? It's all bread. It's all bread. It's all sliced bread, hamburger buns, hot dog buns. It's all the same stuff, right? But there's so much variety to choose from. So if you have an idea and somebody else just so happens to have that same idea, have expressed it, that doesn't mean that it's been expressed from your specific point of view. So you can still make it your own, right? it happens. But I find that if you just act on it a little bit, even if it's just jotting it down to kind of see what you're going to do about it, or sort of write down the idea to get it out of your mind, I feel like that helps keep ideas flowing. Now, for me, anytime I get an idea, I usually get them a lot when I'm driving. Get a lot of ideas when I'm driving. I also get a lot of ideas like fresh out the shower in the water, and maybe that's connected to the astrology of it all. I don't know, but I tend to get lots and lots of ideas anytime I'm near water or sort of in water. So or right before I wake up, or right before I go to bed. And so I keep a notebook next to my bed so that I can jot those ideas down, and then we can come to it. So for the book cover that we worked on recently, I actually got that idea as I was waking up, for the morning, where I was getting ready to get up, get my day started. And I was like, ooh, I could it came to me as a picture. I could see it in my mind as an image, right? And then the details started to fill in, and then it just went from there. And so that's kind of how it usually is for me when it comes to ideas and things like that. I usually can kind of see them first, and then I jot them down or work on them if I have the time to do it immediately, and then go from there. All right, so it looks like it's shaping up really well. Again, this is always a pretty rough process. I will go through and make sure that it looks as close to my reference as I can get it. Of course, feeling a lot more loose. So right now it feels slightly stiff. So what I'm going to do is actually lower the opacity of this, and we're going to draw it all over again. We're going to use that as a blueprint, but this time I'm actually going to put in a line of action. So anytime we're doing something called gesture drawing, we like to put in a line of action. So it looks like she's floating something like this, right? So there's an exaggerated curve to her body. What I'm going to do is begin to place bits of her body on this exaggerated line of action. I can see her head here, right, on this part. Her torso, we can pretend that we can draw it somewhat like a rib cage like this, and then we'll add her chest to it a little bit later. And then, of course, her hips. I'm going to place those in here like so. And we're going to let her body sort of follow this line of action. And I think that's going to give us a much looser falling feeling. Now, I did something like this, something similar to this in the Temperance card. So if you guys have ever seen the Temperance for this deck, this is exactly how I created the Temperance card. So what I'll actually do while I'm kind of working this out is I'll actually show you guys what the Cosmic Gateways Tarot looks like. Now we're at I think we're at 45 cards so far. So we're doing really, really well with the card numbers. That means that we have 33 cards left to do. This is card number 46. So as we complete card number 46, once I get the sketch ready for it, what I'll probably do is go ahead and start on the sixes. That way I have them both working at the same time in the event that I don't have anything else going. Now if something else comes up, then we'll take a break and we'll just keep going one by one. But for the most part, this is pretty much the process. So we're at 45 cards, 33 left to go. I have not shared any of the new cards across social media, but if you've been following along with these live streams, you've seen them all. All right, you've seen just about all of them. This is going to be a little bit bigger than your standard tarot deck. So these cards are going to be just slightly wider, slightly taller for now. Now, if I find a printer locally or within the states that can not maybe accomplish that, but still can print out the cards, they may be standard size, but the goal is going for a little bit bigger, wider, a little bit taller. This will come with a little white book, so like your regular guidebook that comes with most tarot decks, and then there will be an option to add a companion book to it. Now in that companion book, we're going to take a deep dive into sort of my thought processes and the symbolism of each of these cards. So with tarot, we typically deal with not only the images, which is one thing. Most people read the images. There's also numerology involved in tarot. There's also astrology involved in tarot. There are the elements involved in tarot. There's all kind of alchemical things that go on with tarot. And so it can get very complex, right? And so in that complexity, we'll sort of deep dive into my thoughts and why I chose certain motifs and what that has to do with Cosmic Gateways Tarot as a whole. So we'll do a deep dive into the theme of this particular deck, why the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, what that means, how that can help you as you read for yourself and move from each gateway to the next, right? So that will be the companion book that will be optional, an optional purchase with this particular project. So I'm very excited for it. Now, we've been working on this now for about 6 years. It'll be 7 years in October. So this may be one of them that take a little while to get done, right? But I will say it is a labor of love. It's definitely one of those things that I have not yet gotten tired of working on. I do get stuck though. I do get stuck, and this was one of the cards that I was stuck on up until recently. I do get stuck on the card. Sometimes I am not sure about how to best depict the cards. Now, of course, I could do a clone of whatever exists, but to me, one of the running themes for this particular deck is that it is very much a reflection of my own experiences and sort of my own spiritual growth. So as with this card, and as with a lot of them as they develop, I always ask myself, what does this look like in real life? When have I experienced this moment? How can I identify with whatever the meaning of this card is? So of course, with the Five of Pentacles, again, dealing with financial loss, to me that feels like drowning, and sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, and it feels like everything you reach for fails, right? Everything you apply for, you're rejected to. Every sort of you're just constantly bombarded by the pressure of the situation, and nothing seems to be opening up, but you can see it right? And so that is the idea behind this particular card. So I wanted to again lean into that drowning aspect, but that is this process for all of the cards that I've developed up to this point. I like to ask myself, when have I felt this particular experience, and what does it look like in real life, right? What story can I tell with the meaning of these cards so that the brand new reader can read these with ease, right? I don't want it to be so overly complicated that you have a hard time sort of deciphering what is going on with the cards. I love to see that people are identifying with the images and they can sort of pick and choose their own meanings, because one thing that I know just from being an artist in general is that art is very subjective. And just like we read and interpret images in a museum, that is the exact same process we take with tarot. It's just that we have the added astrology and we have the added numerology to add to our own interpretations of these cards. But my job as the artist of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, as well as the writer of the companion book and the guidebook that will be coming with it, is that I want to make it as clear as, give, of course, room for you guys to have your own interpretations, but also just express and explain what I was going for in the making of these images, right? So those are the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So far, very, very excited about it. Now, we do have the sixes, and I'll show you guys. Let me see if I have them available here. I want to show you guys what the development sheet for the sixes looks like. So at the time that I developed the fives, went through the whole thumbnailing process. I did this one too, right? Even though I came back and changed it. Went through the whole process. I actually developed the fives and the sixes at the same time. So as we work through the fives, a lot of that has changed and evolved. And so these are the sixes, and I imagine a lot of this will change and evolve as well. So anytime I'm developing these cards, I'm going through all of the keywords. I'm going through their numerological meanings and associations, colors, themes that I noticed throughout the four suits. All of the things, right? And I am figuring out how I can express that in a real life scenario. So these are the sixes. This is where we're going to be working on next, and I'll show you the fives, the development for the fives, and kind of explain how it moved forward. And of course, we have most of the fives here online, so if you've missed any of those are going to be available for you guys to check out, just to see where they are, where we are on the how they look, right? So this is what the fives look like, right? So now they have changed. The two that stayed pretty much the same was the Five of Swords as well as the Five of Cups. I knew pretty much what those were going to look like. Now when it came to the Five of Wands, I had an idea, but one of my favorite illustrators had a similar idea, and I guess I don't know if it was a subconscious thing or we just had the same idea at the same time. I don't know. But I had an idea of representing the Five of Wands as a ball of knots because it deals with conflict, right? And I felt in my mind the best way to express that was in this knot. So one day on the whim, I think I had the idea and I was really excited. I did the thumbnail and all of that. And I think the very next day I was showing my husband the book that goes with her tarot deck, and I believe it is, don't get me lying, child, I don't know the name of it. I got it, but I have no idea what the name of it is. But anyways, I was going through her companion book and I was looking at the art, and my thumb just so happened to cross, I want to say it was the Ace of Wands for her deck, and it was not. And I was like, oh hell, I can't do that. Right? So I was like, okay, I really had to go through like a brief sort of period of talking to myself to see what the heck I was going to do. Do I move forward with it knowing that someone else has the same thing? Because I just told y'all, that somebody else have an idea, just move forward with it anyway, because you can still express it in your own voice. But to me, it was too one-of-one. It was too like on the nose, right? So I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. Came up with the tug of war idea and then proceeded with that, got that done. With the Five of Pentacles, I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do, right? So the idea that I was leaning towards was having someone look through a window in a bakery. I want to say I just recently saw another deck creator do the same thing, but I wasn't completely sold on it anyway. So now we're at the drowning, so I think we're doing well and we're going to continue to do well. So I am going to actually wrap this stream up. I'm going to continue to work on the pose of my characters, so when we come back on Wednesday and next Sunday, we'll have a lot more to show, and I'll have a lot more we'll be ready to do like the flats and things like that by next Sunday. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this live stream. I hope that you guys learned a little bit from me, learned a little bit about my process. Thank you so much for joining me, whether you're watching this live or the replay. I really appreciate you all for being here. If you would do me a huge favor and hit the like button if you like live creation videos, and if you just want more people to see these streams, right, think other people will get something out of it, that helps me out so much. If you have not yet subscribed, please do that. I stream twice a week. I'm going to work on getting some standalone videos out so that we have a little bit of balance, but I'm just one person, so we're going to do the best we can. If you like the art that I create, there are going to be some links down in the description for how you can get a piece for yourself. And if you have a project that you think I will be a good fit for, there are going to be some links for how you can reach out to me and we can get the ball rolling on your project. So without further ado, I hope you guys have a happy, creative, and prosperous rest of the week. Peace.